Happy New Year. Welcome back to another year on Out of the Bubble podcast. Happy 2022. I really wish you all lots of good health, happiness, and a really more positive tone to the new year this year. I'm excited to share some amazing women with you again. And we're starting off with a lady I actually met last year. And she's one of those women that when you talk to her, you always come away feeling better. You feel more uplifted, inspired, and she just has an amazing sense of identity. So I knew I had to get her on the podcast. Dr. Monika Singh Gangotra is a psychologist, she's a children's author, and she has an amazing sense of style. She wrote a book called The Sunflower Sisters, which is really tackling colorism and really making sure that we get that message across that all skin colours are beautiful. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about what inspired her to write the book and her own experiences, and let's get this conversation out in the open. So I'm really looking forward to what she can share with us all today, because I know that you're going to be blown away by her. And if you haven't already found her on Instagram, I can't wait for you to see her. Her fashion and her sense of style is amazing. I'm always blown away by her outfits. I would love to go through her wardrobe. So without further ado, I am looking forward to talking to Monika this morning. Grab a coffee and enjoy. Monika, I was so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Rachel.
It was lovely to talk to you last year. And as soon as we'd finished talking, I was like, I've got to get Monika on the podcast.
Time just flew. It was like we were just chatting, and it just all of a sudden it was all over, and It was lovely. Really, really nice. I had a wonderful time.
So I've done an introduction about you. But how do you introduce yourself to people? Because you've got lots of strings to your bows.
My name is a really big part of my identity. So I always am very clear about my name and what it means to me and stuff like that. So that's always just a big part of who I am. I've kept my maiden name because I feel like that is a real big part of my legacy and who I've become, and that's carrying my dad's name forward, who's been instrumental in my success. I do focus on my name, and that is a large part of my identity. And then I kind of just rattle off the list of little things that I do, that all the pies that I have my fingers in. So my name is Monika Singh Gangotra, and I have a PhD in psychology. I have a PhD in psychology, but I also am launching a fashion label. I worked as a stylist for a few years, and I had this wonderful opportunity to launch my own clothing label. And I'm also now a children's picture book author.
And your book is just so beautiful, and I'll share the links for everyone to go and have a look at it. And if you have got children, I definitely recommend you go and buy it, because it's not only beautiful in its illustration and the style of it, Monika, it's your message. So where did the inspiration come from behind the book?
Well, Sunflower Sisters is a series, and so the second one's coming out this year, which I'm very excited about. But I wanted to be able to have a children's picture book that was a mirror for South Asian audiences, and also as like a window into what our lives are like. I think that it's really important to be able to educate and inform and have lovely stories and things like that for our younger generation, because they are our future, and educating them in a way that they can carry things on is really important to me. And I've been writing children's stories for children since I had my daughter, who's going to be 7 soon. And anything with a South Asian influence, I always tend to kind of be drawn to and buy. I want to support South Asian creatives and artists in any way that I can. So I do my best to kind of invest in that stuff. And when I wasn't able to find stories that kind of resonated with my life. A lot of the stuff I was finding was very folktale, very kind of traditional stories, which is not necessarily how we live or how my daughter's going to grow up. We're very much a mix of all the cultures that we're growing up amongst, And so I wanted to have stories where my daughter could be like, oh, that looks like my friend, or that looks like me, or yeah, we eat pizza on a Friday night, and all that kind of stuff. So an amalgamation of our whole life, the buildings, the clothes, everything, so a fusion of everything in those books. So basically I wrote these stories, and I used to tell her these stories, and my husband in lockdown was like, they're really good, you should submit them, I really like them. They're important, and I think that you could do something nice for the world. And so I did. And I was very, very lucky that Outlet Press loved my books, loved the concept, and went with it. And they have maintained the integrity and the authenticity of my stories. And I'm forever grateful for that. Even down to the editors, the illustrators, they all, you know, we had an editor who was a racism expert edit the book, and we had the artist is of mixed race heritage, but she was married to a South Asian man, and so her family, so there was so many wonderful influences, and the synergy in the team it just felt like serendipity.
And I love the fact that you're really targeting the younger generation, because they're the ones that really can create this massive change, aren't they? And sadly, I think there's lots of adults that still need that education, but to get in at a young age, I think is really special.
But I think the book is written in a way that it will need a little bit of adult supervision, and not in the way that there's anything that's too confrontational. It is a loving, warm book, but we were very mindful that we did want parents to read this book as well, and be able to lovingly redirect and in a gentle way kind of explain to them that these behaviors exist and there are ways that we can change it. So they're educating their children, but they're also going, actually, I do that.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I've said that stuff before, or I've heard someone say that to me, or I've experienced that personally, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And it's about empowering everyone that reads the book that we can make change. And it doesn't have to be, making change doesn't have to be aggressive or, you know, unkind. It can be in a beautiful way. You can make change with love, you know, and I think that's very important in my books, is using education as a way to change the world with kindness.
I love that. You just have such a beautiful way of putting everything, Monika, honestly. What were your experiences? Did you experience this when you were younger then? Has that had an impact on your life?
So basically, I grew up in Australia, which is under the glorious sun, and we had a very outdoorsy lifestyle. We were very close to the beach. I grew up on the coast. I used to go swimming lessons, and there's a very large Punjabi Sikh community where I grew up as well. It was where the first Sikh temple was built in Australia, and the community itself is beautiful. It's very nice to live in a country where you're exposed to both. It can be challenging when you're a child, but now I look back and think, wow, I'm so grateful for that, because it has really molded who I am. But growing up, it's very confusing. It is, I'm not gonna lie. So it was about being outside, but then coming home, having my swimming lessons, you know, having my training, because my dad was like, I want you to be able to swim. We're surrounded by the ocean. It's very good for your health. My dad was really, really about exercise and keeping fit and healthy. But my mum was very much, I have two daughters, and, you know, I want them to be presentable and marry someone that is, you know, she didn't want those extra things. She wanted her daughters to be beautiful and wanted to be presented to the world a certain way. And a large part of that is the color of our skin. So I would come back from swimming, or I'd be playing outside, and she's like, you've been in the sun, haven't you? You know, and it would be like, go in the shower and scrub it, like rub it all off, because being dark skinned just meant that you were dirty. You know, so that relationship between being dark and being dirty came along really quickly, which I find devastating and just horrible. There's a, you know, but she didn't know any better. She just wanted her daughters to be successful, and how we looked was a really large part of that, because really, what have girls else have to offer the world? You know, it couldn't be that I'm very funny, or that I might be a bit bright, or, you know, there wouldn't be anything else. It would be, oh, she looks like this. That means those genes are going to carry to her children and their children, and that's the family bloodline. If I want her to find a suitable partner, skin color is very important in her success later on in life, and being settled and being happy. So I now have the courage to kind of say to mum when she's saying these things, or other people when she's saying these things, to say, actually, mum, what you're saying is not very kind. You know, it isn't, that has nothing to do with our success. You know, we've been conditioned to believe that, but really it's not that way. And if someone is dark skinned and they're very beautiful, it would be like her features are so stunning. She has stunning features, but she herself can't be beautiful because her skin has failed her, you know. So just things like that, you know, just saying actually no, she's beautiful all over, you know. So things like that. Anyway, so yes, my childhood had a lot to do about the color of my skin. We were constantly encouraged to wear sunscreen because my mum felt that that would stop me getting a tan. Not necessarily, you know, the dangers of skin cancer and things like that. Had nothing to do with that. I'd pop up with a freckle and mum would be like, oh no, not having that, you know. So I do still have like little freckles here all over my face, but she did what she thought was best, you know.
It's a generational thing, isn't it? Things,
it is,
it is, yes, it was wrong, but they didn't know, you know, this was been handed down to them from the generation before.
100%, Rachel. It's not about demonizing anyone. It's about re-educating them now to say, okay, this has gone on for so long and we're realizing the impact that it has on people, that we can change it. Let's just relearn these things. I think, although they're ingrained culturally, it is everywhere. Pop culture. So growing up, pop culture, like South Asian pop culture was just, it was drenched in colorism. It would be like the main heroine was a fair, beautiful woman, and all the backup dancers were darker skinned. They weren't as made up. Their costumes wouldn't be as glamorous. They were in the background. So you could either be a heroine in your life or you could be in the back. And the only difference was the skin color. It was very clear. The word Gauri, which means white, fair, became synonymous with beauty in songs and lyrics. So anytime anyone would say, oh, she's so gaudy, it just meant she was so beautiful. And when children are born, the complexion is straight away commented on. Oh, she's so gaudy chickadee, she's so fair and white, he's so fair and white, you know. So it would be like a gender thing, boy or girl. Obviously as a boy was a preference, you know, which we're trying to change the narrative on that as well. So yeah, I was very much exposed to colorism, and it was subtle, you know. It was just constant. It just was how it was, Rachel. That's just how it is, you know. And we all strived for that because we didn't want to miss out. We didn't want to feel like we weren't beautiful or that we weren't going to be successful or someone wasn't going to love us, you know. So
at what age and at what stage did you kind of start seeing that this was wrong and this was not doing your mental well-being any good and this is not how you wanted to live your life?
When I started working in the beauty industry, that was very interesting to see how people, how colorism was a part of the industry. It was never talked about. It wasn't a thing in terms of an actual concept that was around. But I started working with a lot of South Asian makeup artists. And I remember there was a very dark skinned model coming in. This is my first experience of this. There was a dark skinned model who came to set, and the South Asian makeup artist said, I can't do her makeup because I don't have the foundation, because I don't carry it. And I'm like, I just, so she didn't get to walk that day because she couldn't be made up. And so
from then on, how she must have felt. I can't imagine how she must have felt having to you know, to stand there.
I never ever went on set like that again. I was prepared. I then started when there were shoots or things going on that I was going to be around or involved in organizing or whatever, it would be like the models would be compensated, but they would bring a foundation of a certain brand that matched their color, that was a color match for them, and they would come to set fully prepared. I just could not have that ever again, you know. And you know, I'm not at the top, is it? I have to go through people to be able to, but I had no problem doing it. And if there was a problem, I genuinely have no problem saying, I'm sorry, I can't be involved in the project. When that happened and I saw that, it just changed my world. And I then started researching a little bit more about all of that stuff. And you know, when there's photoshopping and whitewashing, you know, and a lot of the models I was seeing, South Asian models who weren't as dark but weren't as fair, were given lighter shades of foundation. And it was just, it was like they couldn't go past a certain point of a foundation color. It just, you know, it was just a lot. So then I thought, wow, this is a problem, you know. And I've got family members who have grown up, you know, with darker skin, not just from tanned, but from birth, you know, buying products, harmful products that have toxic chemicals, you know, trying to bleach their skin, lighten their skin color, not going out in the sun, not going to the beach, like, and being able to enjoy just little things. I didn't realize how big of a problem it was, because mine just became a habit, you know, whereas like, and I was managing it, but for some people it was really hard. Like, you could see it, that there would be anguish around that thing, and then it stopped making sense for me. I was like, no, that's just ridiculous, you know. Colorism has so many implications for caste as well, and that's a really big issue for me. I don't believe in caste. People are different. We are just different. No one's better or worse than anyone else. And so the implications for caste, especially in India, that the darker skinned you are of a lower caste, and it just the inequality that it brings is something that I just didn't want to not do anything about or address.
I mean, it's such a big issue, isn't it? And it is so ingrained in that culture that it's going to take time to shift. And I'm guessing it still exists now. Having these conversations, Monika, hopefully people listening, it starts to educate them and make them think differently about the situation, and hopefully start creating change. But it's a long process, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And, you know, even if it's just one person, even if it's just my daughter that's read my book and goes into the world and goes, oh, actually, I don't agree with that. What you're saying is not very nice, or I don't understand that. Can you explain what you mean? Because that's not how I've been brought up to view the world. I mean, that's, you know, job done, tick, you know.
I mean, you could tell you've got a strong sense of identity, and I absolutely adore your Instagram page. Can't wait for listeners to go over and have a look at you, because, you know, your fashion sense, your sense of style is just, well, it's your personality comes through it. But have you always had that strong sense of wanting to express yourself through your clothes as well?
Do you know, my parents, when I look at their pictures and growing up, were always like quite trendy. You know, I've got these wonderful pictures of my dad in like roll necks and brocade blazers, and my mum wearing these magnificent coats and bell-bottom trousers, and she was really trendy, and she always had an air about her and how she presented herself to the world. So me and my sister always had this thing about how we enjoyed presenting ourselves. I mean, it's not necessarily the most traditional way, but having fun with fashion and clothes and makeup and hair, we were really brought up with a lot of that with my parents. So I didn't really kind of come into my own maybe until I was in university. I loved clothes. I've always loved clothes, but I went to a private school, so my life was consumed in a very strict uniform, which I'm very grateful for. Having a uniform and not having to think about what you're going to wear every day at school, and this pressure that involves, you know. And I was a very, very shy kid. I was painfully shy. Which is very hard, I'm sure, for people to believe now, but I was very shy. And I just kind of felt at university, I was coming into myself a little bit more and able to have the freedom to express myself in a way that I'd never really truly explored before. You know, growing up, you wear the clothes that your parents buy you. And although I felt like my mum always had really good taste, there's something different about picking something that's you've seen for yourself and that you can envision yourself in. And I just felt it became like this wonderful expression in that because I was so shy, I was very quiet and found it very difficult to strike up conversation, that I felt like people weren't really getting to know me, or I wasn't allowing people to get to know me. But my clothes became a way around that, in that I'd get dressed up and people would know a little bit more about me, you know. So I really liked that concept, that I opened myself up a little bit more, and someone would come and you know, it became a soft entry point for people to maybe talk to me,
Yes.
Because I had difficulty striking up conversation, that if I wore this shirt out, someone would say, oh, that's an interesting shirt, and that would start a conversation.
Yeah.
So it was like a little bit of a tool, I guess, to kind of open myself up to the world, which I didn't have.
And obviously you share this on Instagram and you do it so well, but how comfortable are you being so visible on your social media platform? And has that come with any kind of drawbacks from other people's expectations of you?
I think social media is a very interesting place in that you see snippets of people's lives and everyone's becoming hyper aware. And I think it's wonderful to educate people to say, this is not their entire life. This is just a little bit of their whole life.
Yeah.
I don't obviously look like that all the time. I'm a mum. I look after elderly parents. I run a house. I have my businesses. I work. I write. I do all sorts of things. So looking like that is just like a small part of my life, which I love to share with the world, to hopefully inspire people to be able to just express themselves and just go for it, but I have also been very lucky, which not everyone is, that Instagram especially has been a very wonderful space for me. People have been very kind and warm and accepting, which is such a beautiful thing to be a part of. Creating an online community that supports you is such a wonderful thing, because it can be a very dark place. So I have to say that I'm very, very grateful for every single person that I get to engage with or that comes across my page, or it's such a lovely, lovely space for me. And like I said, I'm very happy that so far I've not experienced anything that's been horrible or deterred me.
Good. I'm the same. I do find it's, and I know some people do experience a really tough time on Instagram, but I have been really lucky that the connections I've made have felt really authentic, and actually the support I've had has been amazing. And I think you do feel like part of a community, which I think women, especially as they get older, really need that sense of community, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, I find myself, it's become a source of sort of inspiration and education and community for me. And it's not something that I have to engage in all the time. Initially, when you're building a brand or you're building whatever, there is a bit of pressure. For me, there was definitely pressure to post and engage and whatever. But now I feel like I want to enjoy it for other reasons. I don't feel that sense of whatever. And that's me, it's about reframing. Okay, I can't cater to everyone else's needs. This platform is to cater to my needs. And it's changing that, because you get caught up, don't you?
You do. It's really hard.
I haven't posted for a month. I haven't done this, or I haven't responded to this, or I haven't done that. But now, because there are so many other things in my life that are consuming me, wonderfully so, that I am okay with taking a break, whereas normally I'd feel this whole pressure.
That's a much healthier way.
Exactly. But you have to really train yourself. I think it's not a natural response for me to go, oh, that can wait. And followers drop off, people leave, and initially you think, oh, is my content terrible? Do they not like me or whatever? But then you realize actually they have every right to leave. If I don't inspire them, or they're not okay with seeing what I'm posting, that's totally fine. But even getting to that point was a little bit of a journey, to say that's okay. It's okay, because you should only follow people that inspire you, that bring you hope, that bring you joy. There shouldn't be any of that need, like, I don't want to unfollow them because they'll unfollow me, and then this is drama. I'm very anti-drama.
Me too. And I think, it's that remembering that it's not actually about you, it's about whatever that, it's either you've just not connected with that person can't relate to you. It's about them and not you. And I think it's about changing that perspective, isn't it, of kind of saying, okay, it's fine.
And I think that it's a tricky line about creating content for your followers, or creating content that it truly is an expression of yourself. And so I'm very mindful that I'll only post things that I am happy with, rather than thinking, oh, so I think someone would like that, or I'm gonna, I don't do that. Which it takes a lot of strength and self-reflection okay, is this authentic to me? Is this what I'm about? Is this what I want to share with the world? You know, and I like having the control of posting what I feel is right for me, showing parts of my life, my kids, my husband, my work. I like having the control. You know, which not everyone has the luxury of on Instagram, you know.
And also, you know, one thing I wanted to ask you about is and I know we talked about it last year when I talked to you, and it's something that stayed in my head actually. So the sunflowers, you know, because I just think this is so beautiful, the story behind the sunflowers. So obviously the book's called Sunflower Sisters, you know, you see the sunflowers in the clothing of the young girls in the book. You feature sunflowers in your fashion a lot. So what's the inspiration behind that? What's the story behind the sunflowers?
So initially, the story wasn't called Sunflower Sisters. That was a working title that my editor and publisher kind of came up with, because I talked about sunflowers so often in my writing, which it all just made sense when it came together. So I have to give credit to my wonderful writer friend and publisher, and so the thing with the sunflowers in my life is that we used to live on this lovely property in a very small coastal town in Australia, and my mum loves gardening. We've always had grown up with fruit and flower trees and plants in our gardens, and we had like guava, mango, we had this fruit called lugat, we had peaches, we had a pear tree that my brother drove over in his tractor, and my mum cried. I remember she cried because it was never going to fruit again, because it was like still a sapling, and it grew but it never had fruit. And we had plums, oranges, lemons, we had a lime tree, and then like we had a driveway, and then the other side of the driveway we had some citrus trees. Anyway, what happened was we'd get flocks of birds that would especially come for our guavas, and they were these beautiful like rainbow lorikeets, like they were stunning birds, and my mum loved them. They were super loud, and they would come and they'd have a party in our front yard, and my mum just felt like there were times throughout the year that there wasn't enough fruit to feed them. And so she started buying birdseed, and we have pretty consistent weather. We have like a winter and a summer, but it's never that cold. It's sort of slightly always a little bit warmer than other places. And so she started buying birdseed, and in the birdseed were sunflower seeds, sorry. And so when she'd scatter them in our yard, our very well fertilized yard, we'd have sunflowers that started growing, and they were ginormous. They were huge. And she used to grow like sunflower sprouts as well to put in salads and things like that. So there were sunflowers around us all the time, and I'd never seen how sunflowers grew. So when we were a kid and these came up, I was like, oh my God, that's how they grow. And then the center gets seeds and they fall out, and it's just this beautiful cycle of life. I just loved everything about them. But those are some of the most beautiful images that I have of my mum, is in the front yard, sunflowers, and her just tending to her birds and trees in the mornings. You could see the sun coming. It was just so that for me is an imagery that I carry with me a lot. And sunflowers are just happiness.
And I think you said to me last time something along the lines of you want to be somebody else's sunflower. And I I came away thinking, I love that. That's just such a lovely thought, be somebody else's sunflower.
So in the Sunflower Sisters book, which I have a copy here somewhere, on the very last page, it kind of talks about how we can change our views on colorism. And the very last thing that I write is that be someone's sunflower. You know, it is super important to, whenever you can, you know, bring joy and happiness and life into other people's journeys, because it is hard to be that for yourself all the time. It is, let's be realistic, life can be tough. You know, we're faced with all sorts of issues and problems and, you know, worries and things for the lives that we want to create for ourselves, our children, and the people around us. It's a lot. There's a lot of stress. And so waking up every morning and being positive and trying to fight through that, I find for me is sometimes a bit unrealistic. But I realize that I'm so grateful that I have people in my life that became sunflowers for me, so that when I wasn't okay, they were there for me, and they brought light for me, and they brought joy for me to help me rebuild that road back again. So I think being someone else's sunflower can be a choice, when we can't always choose for ourselves, that it can be a choice to be that for someone else.
We
all need sunflowers in us.
We do, and it's just such a beautiful message. It really is. So what's next in terms of the fashion? Because I know that you are developing a new fashion line, which is super exciting. I can't wait to see that. So what's happening with that?
So when I was styling, I always kind of felt, oh, I wish I could change this, or I think this would look really good like this, or, you know, when wearing other people's other fashion labels, designs and things like that. And so I started sourcing things on my own, making my own clothes, my own styles and designs and things like that. And I was very lucky that I ended up having quite a loyal customer base that were interested in buying pieces from me that I'd create. And I did a little bit of training and really got my skills up to a level where I could get by, and then I built up a team of tailors and things like that. And what I found that a lot of the stuff that was coming printed or readily available was accessible to everyone, so it wasn't as exclusive. And then I met this wonderful human named Nimi, and she is incredibly talented. We actually met through Instagram through another artist who I'm good friends with, and she connected with Nimi, and then Nimi started following me, and we were just messaging and stuff, and we met for dinner. I love to meet you, I love your work. And so we met up, and I just asked her, I said, look, I really need an artist to create exclusive prints for a clothing label. And she was all up for it. She was, you know, just straight into it. I feel like I could just call her and say, Nimi, I have this concept for a fabric, I want it to look like this is the size, this is the color palette, go. And I'd wake up the next morning and it was there, you know. So when we were building up the things, she was working tirelessly around the clock to kind of build up the collection of fabrics. And then COVID happened. And so we kind of had quite a few stumbling blocks, but we're very, very grateful now. We're moving production to the UK for the most part, so we can have a little bit more hands-on and control, so hopefully this year that's going to launch, and amazing. We are about slow fashion, heritage pieces to carry on forever, things that will be passed down, things that are made from natural fabrics, that are all one-off.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't wait to see. The prints that you have on you, you know, when you're showcasing what you're wearing, the prints are just beautiful. They really are. Thank you. So if anyone's listening to this rather than watching on YouTube, go over and either go onto the Instagram or come onto YouTube to see what Monika's wearing today, because that's just an example of how gorgeous the prints are. Yes, gorgeous. Love it.
Thank you. It's just a cotton, lovely shirt that you can just you just have to gently wash it, and it dries to perfection. Everything comes lined, and just we like Nimi and I realize that we are very similar in how we like our clothes to be made, and what they represent, and they really have become a real expression of who we are as a team as well. You know, we are a fusion. She's grown up here in the UK, I grew up in Australia. We have influences from all around the world, so you know, I don't necessarily want to wear like a traditional salwar kameez all the time, which is the top and the bottom all the time. I don't want to dress traditionally all the time, but I do like to wear like European inspired or Western inspired clothes, which have a little bit of flavor of my heritage. So that's what Monika Nimi has been about fusing the two. There will be some traditional pieces, but everything is mostly fusion wear to bring all of our worlds together. Excellent. And we're very, very excited about that.
No, I can't wait. Keep me informed on that one. I'll be watching. Honestly, Monika, I could talk to you for so much longer. Time's running out. I've got my last 4 questions that I'm going to be asking all my guests this year, just to give a little bit more insight into what makes you tick. So my first question is, what book has inspired you?
So this one has resurfaced in terms of inspiration. I read this book about 10 years ago, and it's called Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. And it is a story of these 2 girls who develop this bond, and they write notes to each other in the secret fan. And it's such a beautiful, I just love the story. But the main thing of why it's resurfaced for me and why it's so important as a piece of writing to have in my life to refer to, is because it is very clear in that it shows life is not always what it seems. And I use social media a lot, and this, written before social media was even a thing, is that it shows that the girls were kind of presenting themselves to the world in a certain way, and they were viewed in a certain way. But when they stripped all that back, it was nothing at all like what it seemed. Everything was completely the opposite, and it focused on like sisterhood and love and your bonds with your family and what the sacrifices that you have to make. And so it's that Snowflower. I don't want to give too much away. I think they've
I'm going to add it to the list.
I think they've made it into a film, but I've never watched it because I love the book so much.
Yes.
Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C is just so, I felt was really relevant for me now and how I'm living my life, in that, you know, you only see a little bit, but what's behind that little bit is completely the opposite, you know, or can be, you know, and to not take everything for surface value.
Right, adding that one to the list.
Yeah, really.
A piece of music or song that always motivates you?
Okay, so this is actually a Hindi song sung by one of the most greatest artists that has ever lived, Lata Mangeshkar, and it's called, Aaj Fir Jeene Ki Tamanna, which is a Bollywood song from my dad's favorite film called Guide. And it is about this beautiful woman. The song itself is about this beautiful woman who talks about how she's pulled herself out of like the thorns and the shackles of her life, and she is using the day to be reborn and relive her life again. And just the freedom in this song and the expression and her love. She talks about how her heart is just fluttering, and how she has been in darkness for so long that it's like she's found the light again. And I think sometimes when I'm feeling down and these lyrics just kind of spring into my mind, it's like, you know, tomorrow is another day. Yeah. And you have another opportunity, and it is all just, yeah, I really, really love that song. She talks about how it becomes like ecstasy, that freedom that was holding her back, and how she's broken through that has become like an intoxication for her, you know, and she's high on life, you know.
I'm sure lots of women can relate to that feeling as well, especially as they get into midlife.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a very, very beautiful song, and I just it plays often in my head, and not just because of my connection to my dad, but also because of what it means to me. Yeah. It's just a song of joy and hope, and the light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm going to ask you to send me the link to listen.
I will.
I've actually been in a Bollywood film, and it was fascinating. I was an extra once in a Bollywood film a couple of years ago, and it was such a fascinating experience. It was amazing. It was called something like 1921 or something. It was a kind of, it was almost like a Halloween-y, scary kind of. It was it was a bizarre experience. It was all, it was very mysterious, and but it was an amazing experience. Just watching how it's all kind of put together, and the songs and the music, and it's fascinating. I loved it.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been able to I haven't watched a new Bollywood film for a very long time, just because I have some issues with the culture. But it just in the way that, you know, like not necessarily the films that are released, but the actual culture of the people behind the films. Yeah. And some of the actors. There has been a lot of dark stuff that's surfaced that I really want to. There are films that I grew up in my childhood that feature an actor who was recently exposed as part of the Me Too movement, and he plays like a fatherly figure in a lot of the films. And there was a moment where I thought, oh my God, this is my child. Like I've grown up seeing this, and you know, so I have like a very interesting relationship with Bollywood, whereas growing up it was like Bollywood, you know.
So moving on from that, who inspires you? Who does
Who
inspire
inspired me?
you?
Well, this is a very interesting question, and it's a little bit soppy, but it is my dad. And I will get the tissue out now.
Yeah.
He, the amount of times he's been able to kind of build his life and create so much comfort for us, and who he was as a father, like the most patient, kind man I've ever met in my life. If I could just be a little bit of the person that he was, I think I'd be very, very happy. He was strong and extremely hardworking. He wanted us to have whatever we desired, and that was more often than not at the detriment of his own happiness. He sacrificed a lot for us. So he is definitely my inspiration. I carry him a lot in the decisions that I make, and he is literally my best friend. We, you know, I just we've had a lot of ups and downs in our life, in terms of, like, my mum became very unwell when I was quite young, and so how he was able to take care of her and raise his family and give us everything that we wanted, and the way that he really tried in a time that wasn't common. He raised me and my sister like we were his sons, and we have a brother, but he raised us like we were all equal. And he was very much like, I mean, my brother and sister will completely contest to this, but he did raise us like none of us knew which one was the favorite. We were all secretly the favorite, but they all say that I'm the favorite. But I really admired that about my dad, and we were able to grow and have a parental figure in that way. But my dad and our relationship transitioned into being like friends, where communication could be open. You know, it wasn't him having to teach me to survive in the world anymore. It was about respecting the decisions that we would make and supporting each other in that way. So I'd go to dad and say, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And it wouldn't just be like, I've told you to do this and this is how it needs to be. And you're not going to, you know, so he grew with me, and our relationship grew together like that. So yeah, he is definitely the most inspirational person I've ever met in my life. I have never ever met a man that has been so patient and so hardworking and warm and generous. He's incredibly generous, and I admire him for so many of his qualities.
Well, I'm sure a lot of them passed down to you, Monika, from talking to
I hope
so. And my last question, which I'm trying to encourage women to be more complimentary about themselves, because quite often we find it difficult to accept compliments. So if you were to pay yourself a compliment, what would it be?
It would be my resilience. I am an extremely emotional person. Like, I mean, to the extreme. Like, anger is a 10, crying is a 10, sadness is a 10, happiness is a 10. Like, I'm 10 all the time. So I think that that can be quite overwhelming for me as a person and other people experiencing me. And so people misconstrue my my constant crying as a weakness, but it truly is just an expression of how I'm feeling in a moment. I do cry a lot, not every day, but I cry a lot. And so it people often thought, oh, she's quite weak and she's not going to be able to whatever, but I'm very resilient and I'm very, very strong, and I really pride myself on that. And I don't see my my emotional vulnerability as a weakness. I see it as being able to express how I'm feeling, that people, I think, aren't really used to. And I used to be able to be quite embarrassed because I feel like, oh, people can't handle it, or they're gonna think that I'm a bit silly or immature. But I think being able to express how you feel in a very natural way is a sign of maturity and emotional and an emotional strength that not lots of people have. So I feel things, I think, in a very different way to a lot of people around me, and so that that is definitely a compliment, I think, my resilience and my emotional vulnerability, maybe.
Yeah. No, well, I think that's amazing. And I just love you've just got such a strong sense of who you are. And I think, you know, lots of people listening will be wanting to try, and they're striving for that. That's what we all strive for, isn't it? To try and get to that place where we're all completely comfortable in our skin and know who we are and what we're about, and to live our life freely. And I think that that's wonderful to share. So thank you. It's just been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, as always. How can people find you? So let everybody know about your Instagram page.
My Instagram page is Monika Singh G. That's probably the best way to contact me. I have a link to my email. I'm more often on email than on DMs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the best way to contact me, is through my social media account. I try to be as active as possible, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing to talk to you, and I look forward to watching your progress this year, seeing when your fashion line comes out, keep you posted, and just, yeah, have a great year. Have a healthy, happy and positive year, Monika. It's been a delight to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Rachel.
Pleasure. Take care. I enjoyed my conversation with Monika as much as I did. She just is one of those ladies that always leaves me feeling inspired and really uplifted after talking to her. And if we can take anything away from today, it would be that beautiful message: be somebody else's sunshine. So that's a great way to start 2022, and I'll always remember that conversation. And, you know, it just reminds me as well of how we have to remember what an impact we can make on somebody else, because Monika is one of those people that just radiates positivity and has given me so much to think about. And, you know, I will go away and remember that conversation. So the conversations that you have with other people, you don't know what an impression you might be leaving on them. So keep sharing your stories. That's what this is all about, because you might make an everlasting impression on somebody else that could make a difference to their day. I'll be back next week. See you soon.